संस्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। So as you have seen, today's topic is the philosophy of Ishvara. You see, Sri Ramakrishna's birthday is coming on 15th. So I thought that before we discuss anything about Sri Ramakrishna in detail, we should have an idea of his real nature, because we as Sri Ramakrishna's devotees believe that Sri Ramakrishna was an incarnation of God, born on this earth to help us all progress towards God. And maybe with our own understanding we can't understand his real nature, but we have the words of great souls like Swami Vivekananda and other of his disciples, and they inform us that Sri Ramakrishna was God incarnate. So before going into details about his life and teachings, it is necessary to understand what we can about his real nature. That is why I have selected the topic today, the philosophy of Ishvara. Let us start with a prayer from the Upanishads, which beautifully describes the nature of Ishvara. It is from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. The prayer is like this: Sa tanmayo hi amrita isha sanstogya sarvago bhuvanasyasya gopta sa ishesya jagato nityameva nanyo hetur vidyate ishanaya. यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रणौति तस्मै तं हदेवम् आत्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये. He is the soul of the universe. He is immortal. His is the rulership. He is the all-knowing, the all-pervading, the protector of the universe, the eternal ruler. None else is there efficient to govern the world eternally. He who at the beginning of creation projected Brahma, Brahma means the universal consciousness, and who delivered the Vedas unto him. Seeking liberation, I go for refuge unto that effulgent one, whose light turns the understanding towards the Atman. So this is a very, very famous shloka of the Upanishad. Yo brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedangscha prahinoti tasmai tam hadevam atma buddhi prakasham mumukshurvai sharanamaham prapadye. So yo vai yo brahmanam vidadhati purvam, he who delivered the Vedas unto Brahma, yo vai vedangsha prahinoti tasmai tam hadevam atma buddhi prakasham. Atma buddhi means the buddhi which has for its object the Atman. Mumukshurvai sharanamaham prapadye. I, a seeker of liberation, take refuge in the Ishvara, whose nature has been mentioned thus, whose nature has been described thus. So these are beautiful verses. Many such verses are there in the scriptures which describe the nature of the Ishvara, so that taking them as the basis, we can meditate upon God. Why is this understanding necessary? You see, devotees want to attain Ishvara. Their aim of life is attaining devotion to God. And Sri Ramakrishna has also said that bhakti or devotion to Ishvara is the one essential thing to attain in the human birth. So Swami Vivekananda in his Bhakti Yoga says, Bhakti is a series or succession of mental efforts at religious realization, beginning with ordinary worship and ending in a supreme intensity of love for Ishvara. So, love or attachment towards God is bhakti. And for attaining this love towards God, in the beginning, we should have an idea of the real nature of God. That is the aim of our discussion today. Now, all of you who have studied a little on bhakti must have heard of two great teachers of bhakti. One is Narada, and his book Narada Bhakti Sutras delineate the essentials of bhakti. Another great acharya is Shandilya. So Shandilya has also written Bhakti Sutras, and Swami Vivekananda in his Bhakti Yoga, he discusses two verses of Shandilya. So I will just share the screen. So here you can see the two verses of Shandilya Bhakti Sutras. First two verses, the first verse as you can see is Athato Bhakti Jigyasa. Let us now inquire into the nature of bhakti, what bhakti is. And the second sutra you can see where Chandilya has defined bhakti, Sa Paranurakti Ishware. It is supreme attachment to Ishvara, that is bhakti. Now see, in the second sutra, there are three words, Sa Paranurakti Ishware. Now this Paranurakti is made up of three words, Para, Anu plus Rakti. So below I have written the explanation according to Swami Vivekananda. What is this Anurakti? Anu means in Sanskrit after, and Rakti means attachment. So that attachment which comes after the knowledge of the nature and glory of God. This is what is important. We are supposed to love God, but that love has to have a little knowledge as its basis. Otherwise, any love for the world, any love for worldly people or worldly things, we may take to be bhakti. But we should understand that devotion or bhakti is love and attachment for God and God only. And for that, we should have at least a little knowledge of the true nature of God. Because if you don't know somebody, how can you form any relation towards him? So, a knowledge of God is very necessary as much as we can have in our present condition. True knowledge of God can only be had by those who have realized God. But before that, as a starting point, with the help of the scriptures and our own intelligence, we should try to form an idea of the true nature of God. So, anurakti means the attachment to God which comes after the knowledge of the nature and glory of God. So, today we will try to find out what the scriptures say about God so that we can have an idea of His true nature. This is the thing. So now, first let us start with what the scriptures say is the ultimate reality of the universe. I will quote from Swami Nikhilananda. The Indo-Aryan thinkers, as early as the times of the Rig Veda, recognized the eternal unity of existence. This unity pervades the universe yet remains beyond it. All objects, animate and inanimate, are included in it. Gods, men, and subhuman beings are part of it. As the unchanging reality behind the universe, it was called Brahman by the Hindu philosophers. So Brahman, as we all know, is the ultimate reality, Brahman, one without a second, which is the material cause of the universe as well as its efficient cause. So these two philosophical terms, material cause and efficient cause, we have discussed earlier, but later we will discuss in detail. So Brahman is the ultimate cause of the universe, and the Upanishads describe Brahman as having two aspects. I had touched upon this in an earlier talk, that Brahman has two aspects. The first is Nirguna Brahman, which is without any quality or characteristic. It has absolutely no form, no color, no smell, no taste. You cannot describe it by any means whatever. Absolutely no attributes. That is Nirguna Brahman. The other aspect which has qualities is called Saguna Brahman. Saguna means with gunas. So Saguna Brahman has many qualities, all that we attribute to Ishvara. Because this Brahman, Saguna Brahman with qualities, is actually Ishvara, or whom we call God. This we should remember. So all of us, those who regard the world as real, we have to imagine Brahman only as Saguna Brahman or Ishvara. And what are its qualities? It is omnipotent, omnipresent, and it is the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of the universe. In a very short form, I'm telling. So, such a being is called God, Ishvara, and in philosophical terms, it is called Saguna Brahman or Brahman with attributes. Okay, now let us examine the nature of this Saguna Brahman and see what is the difference between Nirguna and Saguna Brahman. Nirguna Brahman or Brahman without attributes is the basis of Brahman with attributes. Brahman with attributes is the personal God, and Nirguna Brahman is the basis of personal God. So what is this Saguna Brahman? This Saguna Brahman is Nirguna Brahman conditioned by Maya. This we should understand. When the Brahman without attributes is conditioned by Maya, it is called Brahman with attributes. When Nirguna Brahman is conditioned by Maya, it is called Saguna Brahman. So, Brahman, as it were, imposes upon itself a limit and thus becomes manifest as God, soul, and the world. Creation, preservation, and destruction of the world are the activities of Saguna Brahman. So it is like compared to an ocean, when the ocean is still, absolutely still, it is Nirguna Brahman. But when the ocean has some activity, for example, waves, etc., the same ocean is called Saguna Brahman. So the ocean is the same, whether it is still or whether it has any movement like waves, etc., the ocean is only one. Similarly, Brahman is only one. When that Brahman is not engaged in any creation, preservation, or any other activity, when it is absolutely still, when it is without any attributes, it is called Brahman without attributes. But the problem is, we who are in Maya, in this situation, our present condition, we can never imagine or think of Brahman without attributes, because that is beyond the mind. So till we are conditioned by our mind, the highest conception of Brahman which we can have is Brahman with attributes. I'll give you a simple example. Suppose we are in a room enclosed on all sides by some sort of colored glass, say red colored glass, and outside the room there is a big colorless light. Okay. Now suppose we are prisoners inside the room. Till we are prisoners in the room, we can only see that light through the red colored glass. We cannot see it directly. So outside the conception of the red colored glass, we can never have any other idea of the light which is beyond the room. We can have a vision of that light only when we go outside the room. So now imagine that the room with the red colored glass is our mind. Okay. Till we are enclosed in our mind, by our mind, till we cannot go beyond our mind, we cannot come face to face with the Nirguna Brahman, Brahman without attributes. So till we are bound by our mind, we can only think of Brahman through our mind. So the ultimate reality, when it is seen through our mind, when we try to think of it through our mind, we call it Ishvara. This is the thing. So we should not think that Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman are two different things. Nirguna Brahman, when seen through Maya, is called Saguna Brahman. See, till we are in Maya, these three has to exist for us. What are the three? First, the soul, that is called Jeev. Second is the world, that is called Jagat. And third is the ruler of this world, who is called Ishvara or God. So as soon as the soul descends into Maya, all these three automatically take a place in his life, because within Maya, he is an individual soul and he sees this world around him. So, according to him, God is the Nirguna Brahman, or the ultimate reality, seen through Maya. This is very important, the thing which we should always remember, that when we are worshipping Ishvara, when we are worshipping Jesus Christ, Buddha, Rama, or Krishna or Ram Krishna, any form of Ishvara, we should realize that we are actually worshipping Brahman itself. But we are worshipping now in this way because till we are within Maya, we cannot have any idea of Nirguna Brahman. And even such is the nature of Ishvara that even those great souls who have gone beyond Maya, they still like to worship Ishvara in his form with attributes. That is beautifully described in the Bhagavata in a very famous verse, that even those rishis who have gone beyond Maya, they also sometimes like to worship God in his Saguna aspect, the aspect with attributes. Such is the wonderful glory and power of Ishvara. So, this is about the real nature of Saguna Brahman. Saguna Brahman is as real as Nirguna Brahman because they are not two different things. Nirguna Brahman, when viewed through the haze of Maya, is Saguna Brahman. So when Brahman becomes conditioned by the upadhi of Maya and shrinks, as it were, because of that Maya, it is called Saguna Brahman or conditioned Brahman. But it must not be forgotten that this conditioning of Brahman is not real. When we think of God in that way, we don't change the nature of God. God is what he is. God is in no way tainted by the way in which we think of him. As our mind ascends higher and higher, our conception of God also changes till finally we go beyond Maya and stand face to face with the ultimate reality. So, we should always remember that Saguna Brahman or Ishvara is absolutely real, because that is not different from the ultimate reality, which is called Brahman. It is Brahman which appears to us in two aspects, Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman, but it is the same Brahman. A snake is the same, whether it is peaceful or agitated. A snake is lying there coiled up, and then it starts moving. So do we say that there are two different snakes? Not at all. It is the same snake. But when it is still, it is also snake, the same snake, and when it is moving, it is the same snake. So when it is still, it has been compared to Nirguna Brahman, and when it is engaged in activity, it is called Saguna Brahman. So Brahman with attributes is known as God, Ishvara, Bhagwan, etc. And he is the personal God worshipped by devotees. This is the thing. Now, let us see how the scriptures define this Saguna Brahman or Brahman with attributes. For that, we have to go to the Brahma Sutras. You see, these three scriptures, first is Bhagavad Gita, second is the Upanishads, third is the Brahma Sutra. We should know what they contain. Gita, as you know, is the message Sri Krishna gave to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it is the greatest, one of the greatest commentaries on the Vedas. But the Upanishads are the Vedas themselves. Mind you, the Upanishads are the Vedas themselves, and Gita is one of the best commentaries given on the Vedas or the Upanishads. And Brahma Sutra is the systemization of the philosophy of the Upanishads. The philosophy of the Upanishads have been systemized in the aphorisms called Brahma Sutras. When they try to define things like Ishvara by what the Upanishads say about Ishvara. So a systemization of the philosophy of the Upanishads was written in an aphorism form. It is attributed to Vyasa, the sage Vyasa, and it is called, the work is called Brahma Sutras. So in Brahma Sutras, the definition of Ishvara is given, Janmadhyasya yataha, Janma adi, yataha. Janma means birth, adi means etc., yataha means from whom. So etc., birth, etc. means birth, continuation and dissolution of the universe. So who is God? From whom there is the birth, continuation and dissolution of the universe. This is how Brahma Sutras define Ishvara or God. Who is God? Who creates, sustains and destroys the universe. So Swami Vivekananda has beautifully explained this. I quote him. He says, the eternal, the pure, the ever free, the almighty, the all-knowing, the all-merciful, the teacher of all teachers is God. So in a one sentence, he encompasses all the basic features of Ishvara, or the basic characteristics. The eternal, the pure, the ever free, the almighty, the all-knowing, the all-merciful, the teachers of all teachers. This is one definition of Ishvara. And the second, which is more to the liking of devotees, it is Ishvara Anirvachaniya Prema Swarupa. It is defined by Narada in his Bhakti Sutras in this way, that who is Ishvara? Anirvachaniya, it is inexpressible. Prema Swarupa, that is inexpressible love. His nature is of inexpressible love. Why inexpressible is said? Because we ordinary people understand love only as worldly love. So to separate the bhakti from worldly love, this term is used, that it is inexpressible love. These are the best definitions of the personal God or Ishvara according to Swami Vivekananda. So are there two gods? One is the Neti Neti Satchidananda and one is this God? No, God is only one. So the existence, knowledge, bliss of the Jnanis and the God of love of the devotees, it is the same Satchidananda who is the God of love is also personal and also impersonal. So the personal God worshipped by the bhaktas or devotees is not separate from Brahman. All is Brahman, one without a second, the unity absolute. But it is too much of an abstraction to be loved and worshipped. How can you love something which has no attributes at all? How can you have any feeling towards that? So, Brahman in its Nirguna aspect cannot be loved. We can only love someone who has these kinds of wonderful qualities as Ishvara has. That is why we find that all over the world, God is, by 99.99% of the population of the world, God is worshipped in his Ishvara form, because that is the only form which we can imagine, which our minds can grasp. This is the thing. This we should remember. Now, again, Swami Vivekananda explains beautifully the relation between God and ourselves, the ordinary jiva and God. Again and again you have heard that our real nature is not separate from Ishvara. So how is that? Swami Vivekananda beautifully explained this. Suppose you imagine that the whole world is made up of clay. We have gone to many museums. So many museums have some woodwork, everything is made up of wood there, furnitures, etc., tables and all. And some museums are there which everything is made up of clay, small statues, everything. We have seen such museums. So many figures, different figures made up of clay. Maybe big houses, or big or small, very small animals like a mouse or a cat. So all these are made up of clay. Okay. So this clay, out of which the whole universe, now we can imagine the substance out of which the whole universe is manufactured, so to say, is made up of. So that one substance is called Brahman. Brahman is the clay or substance out of which an infinite variety of articles of this universe are fashioned. Now, as clay, they offer, but or manifestations differentiates them. See, a mouse is also made up of clay, and suppose an elephant is also made up of clay. As clay, they are one. Mouse is also clay, elephant is also clay. But till they have that form of the mouse and the form of the elephant, till they have that form will differentiate them. Before every one of them was made, they all existed potentially in the clay. And of course, they are identical substantially. But when they are formed, and so long as the form remains, they are separate and different. The clay mouse can never become a clay elephant. Because as manifestations, form alone makes them what they are. Though as unformed clay, they are all one. I hope you have been able to follow. So in the same way, our essential nature, what we are made up of, is the same as Brahman, because a clay mouse is the same as the clay elephant essentially. But till the form remains, till the name and form remains that this is a mouse and this is an elephant, till then they differ vastly. An elephant can simply, with a breath, he can blow away the mouse. So till a mouse is a mouse, it will be absolutely foolish for him to say that I am the same as the elephant. When will he be the same as the elephant? When he gives up the name and form. The name, the mouse, and the small form of the mouse. When he gives them up, then he will become essentially the same as the elephant. So, Brahman, when it is conditioned by the name and form, it becomes the Jiva. So, till the Jiva is a Jiva, he has to understand that he is an ordinary Jiva and God is the ruler or Ishvara. But when it is said that our essential nature is the same, this means that when we give up our name and form, when we give up, this means that when we go beyond Maya, then there will be no name and form and nothing to separate us from Brahman. Then only we can understand the great sayings of the Upanishad like Aham Brahmasmi or I am Brahman. Before that, it is absolutely foolishness to say that. We have to start from where we are. This is the thing. So, even in the life of great souls, what do we see? Now, you have maybe you have read the Bhagavata, or the Bhagavata is the life of Sri Krishna. It's a absolutely wonderful scripture. Sri Ramakrishna says that Bhagavata is absolutely soaked in the syrup of devotion. So there wonderful stories of devotees are given. One such devotee was Prahlad. Prahlad is called the king of devotees. So it is said that when Prahlad used to be in Samadhi, he used to experience his unity with God at that time. But as soon as he came down from Samadhi, when he thought that I am Prahlad, the son of Hiranyakashipu, then what happened? Then he did not go about saying I am Brahman. He said, God, I am your devotee. So Swami Vivekananda explains it like this. When Prahlad forgot himself, he found neither the universe nor its cause. All was to him one infinite, undifferentiated by name and form. But as soon as he remembered that he was Prahlad, there was the universe before him, and with it the Lord of the universe. If the universe is there, there has to be a master of the universe also. And this is called Ishvara, who is the repository of an infinite number of blessed qualities. Infinite number of blessed qualities is God. And similar was the case with the gopis. When we read the Bhagavata, we will see gopis, when they lost sense of their own personal identity and individuality, they were all Krishnas, not separate from the ultimate reality. But when they came down to the ordinary level, when they again began to think of Krishna as the one to be worshipped, then they were gopis again, and Krishna was Ishvara again. This is the thing. Was not Swami Vivekananda a great knower of Brahman? Of course he was, we all know that. But when he came down, what did he say? Did he say to Sri Ramakrishna that I am the same as you? I am also Brahman, you are also Brahman. Hmm. Did he say anything like this to Holy Mother? No. Then he worshipped Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother as God, as Ishvara. Because as soon as Swami Vivekananda also came down, when he thought that I am Vivekananda in this body, as soon as his individuality came, at the same time he saw the world, and also the existence of the Ishvara was also automatically has to be admitted. So Sri Ramakrishna also, when he was in Samadhi, he said that he was one with Brahman. But as soon as he came down, he was different and Mother Kali was different. Then he was the worshipper and Mother Kali was the worshipped. But he also said that Mother Kali is not separate from Brahman. So this is a very fine concept which we should always remember. Two things we have discussed, that first, Brahman without attributes and Ishvara are not different. Essentially, they are one. Not only that, we are also essentially not different. But till we are within Maya, till we are within this name and form, till we consider this individuality to be real, we should know that for us, Ishvara or Brahman seen through Maya is the God to be worshipped. So our aim should be to get rid of this false individuality, and that can be done by thinking only about the Ishvara, thinking only about God. This is the thing. So in our current state, we cannot have any idea of Brahman which is not anthropomorphic, to put it in philosophical terms. Anthropomorphic means having human characteristics. We can only think of God as having human characteristics like us, till we are human beings. Why? Again, we have to go to Swami Vivekananda for explanation. I quote him again. He says, the greatest psychologist the world has ever seen, Bhagwan Kapila, demonstrated ages ago that human consciousness is one of the elements in the makeup of all the objects of our perception and conception, internal and external. Beginning with our bodies and going up to the Ishvara, we may see that every object of our perception is this human consciousness plus something else. And this mixture of human consciousness plus something else is what we call reality. Till we are human beings, we cannot get rid of this human conception. That is why Swamiji says that God is as man is. God is as man is. No man can see God but through these human manifestations. Talk as you may, try as you may, you cannot think of God but as man. As you are, he is. This we should remember. Swamiji explains this by saying, if the buffaloes desire to worship God, they, in keeping with their own nature, will see him as a huge buffalo. If a fish wishes to worship God, its concept of him would inevitably be a big fish. And man must think of God as a man. This is the thing. Suppose man, the buffalo and the fish represent so many different vessels, and all of these vessels go to God to be filled. Suppose God fills the buffalo vessel, the man vessel, the sheep vessel. In man, the water takes the shape of a man. In the buffalo, it takes the shape of a buffalo. And in the fish, it takes the shape of the fish. But in each of these vessels, the same water, which is God, exists. This is the thing. So when a buffalo tries to see anything, he sees it with buffalo consciousness. When a human being tries to see anything, he sees something plus his human consciousness. So till we are human beings, when we see God plus human consciousness. We cannot take human consciousness out of that. Only when we are human beings no more, when we have no mind, no body, only then can we say that, yes, now I can face to face, I can see Brahman without attributes, not before that. Not before that. So, this personal God or Ishvara, Swamiji says, is and ever will be all the reality that is possible for the human mind to know. This is the thing. So this is how we should worship God as Ishvara, as one who is all powerful, who is the ruler of the universe, who creates, sustains, and destroys the universe by his mere wish. So Brahman is the ruler of the universe. What does it mean? Two things are implied by that. That he maintains all things in their proper places of the universe. He maintains everything at the correct place and prevents them from clashing from one another. And this same ruler is also called the inner ruler or the Antaryami. He rules us from inside. Antaryami means the inner ruler or the controller within. That is why it is said, he is the Lord of all, he is the knower of all, he is the controller within. So he also is within us and he also maintains the whole universe which is outside us. He maintains the whole universe. He creates, sustains and preserves, destroys the universe. So that is why we have these three forms: Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. These are the same forms. We should not think that they are different. The forms are for our mind to try to understand these three functions of God. When God creates the universe, we call him Brahma. So this difference you should note. Brahma and Brahman. Brahman, when we say, it is the ultimate reality. But Brahma is the name of the God with four heads, who is the creator of the universe. So when God is the creator of the universe, he is Brahma. When he is the sustainer of the universe, he is Vishnu. And when he is the destroyer of the universe, he is called Shiva or Shankara. This is the basis of this triad, Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesha. So this is the nature of the Ishvara and We have to meditate on God by taking the help of the scriptures, of what the scriptures say about him. That is why again and again in the gospel you will see that Sri Ramakrishna again and again he says that you should take the name of God. That is the one thing. Second thing, he says that you should chant the glories of God. Chant the glories means remembering his glories, remembering the true nature of God. If we don't do that, suppose we meditate on Jesus Christ. If we meditate on Jesus Christ, thinking that he was the son of a carpenter, it won't do us any good, because that was not the real nature of Christ. We should meditate on Christ as God himself. And for that, we should always remember what our scriptures say about God. Like he was the deliverer, he had come to save humanity, etc. All these things are there in the Christian literature. So according to the path we follow, those descriptions of God which coincide with our mental attitude, we should always keep before us. Meditate on those and make that meditation the basis of our spiritual practices. Then only we will know that we are able to meditate on God and not on any other thing. So many kinds of beautiful passages are there. I will just quote one or two. In the Upanishads it is there. Esha Sarveshwara, Esha Sarvagya, Esha Antaryami, Esha Yoni Sarvasya, Prabhavapyayo hi Bhutanam. This is the Lord of all. This is the knower of all. This is the controller within. This is the source of all. And this is that from which all things originate and in which they finally disappear. So many beautiful passages are there. Naturally, it is not possible to quote all of them. And if you want to have an idea of God in his destructive aspect, we can also see the Gita. In the Gita, when Arjuna and Krishna are talking and Krishna sees that Arjuna has to be roused up, he is feeling that he is the one who will kill all these Bhishma, Karna, etc. When Sri Krishna sees that Arjuna thinks he is the one who will kill, he doesn't know that I have already killed them. So then Krishna shows his universal form. He says to Arjuna, see my destructive form. And Arjuna sees that great warriors like Bhishma Pitama, Karna are all going into the mouth of Krishna in that huge form. So Krishna says that, see, I am the destroyer. I am the mighty, world destroying time. Kalosmi loka jaya kshayat kshayakrit pravritto. These are the words. Kala asmi. I am the all destroying time. So that form of Krishna embodies the vast extent of creation, preservation and destruction, the past, present and future of gods, men, animals, everything in the universe. So such was the vision that even the great warrior Arjuna was scared, and he requested God that, God, I cannot stand this. Please show me your usual loving form, two-armed form, as the Krishna, beloved of the gopis. So we who are devotees like to think of God in that gentle, compassionate form. That is also an aspect of Saguna Brahman or Ishvara, which is tender, which is gentle, which is redemptive. And many passages describe that nature of God in the scriptures. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, it is said, Raso vai saha. He is bliss itself. Then in the Chandogya Upanishad it is said, Rudra yatte dakshinam mukham tena mam pahi nityam. O Lord, O Rudra, let thy gracious face protect me from ever. Then in the I think it is in the Shvetashvara Upanishad most probably, it is said that Tam Ishanam Varadam Deva Medium Nicha Yemam Shantim Atyantameti. It is said that, O Lord, the giver of blessings, the adorable God, please protect me. So these are the gentle, these emphasize the gentle nature of God, which we all like to see. So that is why the seers, the rishis of the Upanishads addressed him as their father. God is our own father, mother, son, beloved, bandhu, sakha, friend, etc., everything, and prayed him to lead them to the other side of Maya. So the various forms which Saguna Brahman or Ishvara assumes for the welfare of the devotees have been known and worshipped all over the world as the Father in heaven, as Allah, as Jehovah, as Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma, Rama, Ramakrishna, Krishna, etc. And the culmination of this compassionate form, the culmination of this tenderness and love is seen in the life of Holy Mother. That is why all the devotees feel so much at home with Holy Mother, because they know that their God has manifested in his most compassionate and tender form. Nobody is afraid of his own mother, and one can freely approach one mother whenever one is in need. So this is the thing, this is in short what our conception of Ishvara should be like. After we have formed that conception, then we need not go into all this philosophy. Then only the passages from the scriptures which delineate the glories of God, we should again and again chant them, meditate on them, think about them. There are so many beautiful passages, innumerable, so that this conception of Ishvara gets firmly embedded in our mind. Then we know that whom we are praying to actually, whom we are meditating on actually. So to sum up, Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman are not fundamentally different. It is Maya which makes the difference. Sri Ramakrishna explains this beautifully. All is water, but if you insert a stick into the water seems to be divided. It seems to be divided, but it is not divided actually. As soon as the stick is removed, the water becomes one undifferentiated water. And this Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman, the difference beautifully, Sri Ramakrishna, all that we have discussed, in one sentence, Sri Ramakrishna explains so beautifully. He says that Nirguna Brahman is the infinite ocean, and Saguna Brahman are the blocks of ice on that ocean. Such a beautiful description. That ice, is it different from the ocean? No. Essentially the same. But is it the same as the ocean? No. Till the name and form of the ice remains, it is different. So it is the same but also different. Beautiful example. that Nirguna Brahman is the infinite ocean, intense cold freezes the water of the ocean into solid ice, and the blazing heat of the sun melts the ice into water. Likewise, the devotion of the devotee freezes the infinite Brahman into a form, so to say. But when the sun of knowledge rises, that form again dissolves in the infinite Brahman. But for those who don't want to see the infinite Brahman, those forms can remain forever. Because one very pertinent statement of Sri Ramakrishna is there, that he says that the sun dissolves the ice back as water, but there are some places in the ocean where the ice never melts. So there God can be eternally enjoyed in his form as Ishvara. It is not that everybody has to enjoy God in his Nirguna aspect and be merged into Brahman. No. It depends upon the devotee. If he likes to enjoy God as form, he can enjoy Rama, Krishna, so many forms are there. That is why Ram Prasad says, that Sri Ramakrishna quotes him, that Mother, I want to enjoy sugar. I don't want to become sugar. I don't want to become Brahman. I want to enjoy Ishvara. So it depends upon the devotee. If he wants to enjoy Ishvara, if he wants to, he is ready, free to do so, as so many forms, so many qualities, infinite number of good qualities. While if he is devoted to the path of knowledge, he can also be finally become one with the ultimate reality. But till we are in Maya, till we are in this state, till we are human beings, till we think that we are thinking, talking, going, we are performing all our activities, till this world of the Panchabhutas seem real to us, till then we can only worship God as Ishvara, as a human being. And to facilitate this, to help us do this, God comes again and again in a human form as an incarnation, so that it is for our benefit. Since we cannot imagine God to be any other than a being who has taken a human form, he actually assumes a human form. Such is his mercy. And that is called an incarnation. So, this incarnation aspect of God we will discuss later. One follows the other. Now that when we have had a conception of what Ishvara is like, we will now, after that, we will discuss what an incarnation of God is like, so that we can have a concrete idea of those whom we worship as God, like Rama, Krishna, Jesus Christ, etc. That we will leave for later, and today we can end here, I think. So, Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanastu.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Excellent explanation and song, and very well presented. I have just a quick question.
Sure.
Why? I know you're going to discuss about reincarnation later, but why is it that in Hinduism we have this concept of reincarnation? That is, when I say reincarnation, God incarnate, God coming back in the human form. Whereas in Christianity, the Son of God in Islam is the messenger of God, in Buddha is Buddha who they don't believe in God. So why is
That
it
is
important?
that difference. See, that difference is what makes religions different. Otherwise, if everybody believed in the same thing, then there would be only one religion.
But there
But
must be a
when we
common theme, right? There has to be a
common
common
thing,
theme.
but humans beings, as I've said again and again, according to our mental nature, the same phenomenon is described and interpreted in different ways. There
So
is
for
nothing
those,
wrong in that. There is
so
nothing wrong in that.
for those of us who may not consider Ram to be a God incarnate, are you
No
saying that
problem.
we are not Hindus then?
No, of course we are Hindus. Till we believe in the principles, till we believe in the spiritual principles of Hinduism, whether we accept Rama or Krishna or Ramakrishna as an incarnation does not matter at all. But if we say with our mouth that Rama was an incarnation, but we don't believe in the principles which the Vedas delineate, those spiritual principles, the eternal principles, then we are not Vedantins.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much. Because I really have a conflict there that in the name of Ram and Ram temple, we are spending so much money where there are
See, that is that
thousands
is
of people going hungry.
see
And
that what will poor Ram has to what has poor Ram to do with that? This is done by our human beings.
mm,
The Ramchandran is not responsible for this temple business, so we should not confuse these two. This world will continue as it is because we are running it, people like us. So that you leave. When you meditate on God, don't confuse this worldly things with that.
thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Your
Thank you.
song was so beautiful.
Thank you. You are
Yep,
unmuted.
Ramaraj.
Yeah,
I have a few questions.
sure.
Can we identify Krishna and Rama as Ishvara?
That depends upon the devotee. That depends upon you. See, again and again I make this point. When we think of something as some being as Ishvara, that being becomes Ishvara for us. Now, when you say that was Krishna Ishvara, then the answer is Krishna is Ishvara for those who believe him to be Ishvara.
Okay.
This is the main thing you have to. If you worship Krishna as the son of Devki, then he's a human being for you. Then if you meditate on Krishna, you will be meditating on a human being. So you will get that result only. But when you meditate on Krishna as Supreme Brahman, as God, then you will attain God.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have is that you gave an example of Christ. I mean, if you consider him as he's a kind of, I can call God incarnation or whatever it is. But if you think Christ was just a normal person, he did all those great things, then we'll have much greater appreciation for his personality.
See, these are absolutely subjective things.
Okay.
This is your attitude. You should keep your attitude. But you should not try to impose your attitude upon another one. It may be right for you.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
Yeah, excellent talk. And Maharaj, you're singing very beautiful always. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I think if I missed anybody, if they want to say something. I had missed Shubhankar, but he's not there, he's gone. So thank you all of you for giving me your company, though virtually.